welcome back to the AI Marketers Playbook, where we cover actionable frameworks to help you leverage AI and marketing strategies in your business. I'm Audrey Chia, your host, and today I have with me Alex Vacca. Now, Alex is the co-founder of ColdIQ, an AI-powered go-to-market agency that has run more than 3,000 outbound campaigns for over 250 B2B clients, generating over 500K in monthly recurring revenue. He has transitioned from a corporate career into building a multi-entity business ecosystem that now includes an outbound agency, a go-to-market marketplace, and a ColdIQ accelerator program. At ColdIQ, Alex and his team has developed lots of proprietary AI agents that handle everything from lead research, personalization, campaign writing, and optimization. Alex, I'm super excited to chat with you today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Audrey. Super excited to be here, and what a great introduction.
Awesome, Alex. So tell us more about yourself. Were you always in the kind of outbound space? How did ColdIQ get started?
Now, so I actually come more from a corporate background. So I started my career back in Germany, in Berlin. And for 5 years, I worked for a lot of different fast-growing startups. I was more focusing on operations role. So I work in a lot of different industries, in e-com, in crypto. And then the backstory is that Michel, my business partner, we've been friends for like more than a decade now. And back in 2022, he actually created ColdIQ.com, the website we're still using today, not as an agency, but more of like as an affiliate website. So he was listing all the best sales tools and to promote the best sales tools on the market. And then from this, organically, a few people started to ask for some help around outbound services. And so that's how Michel signed the first few clients. And then I joined him later on because he started to deliver services for those 4 clients. And he felt that with the whole AI wave coming, that it would be like a massive opportunity. And for me at that time, I was 27. I also started to get a bit bored of the corporate career. It was the beginning of ChatGPT, so I was like, I need to do something with AI. And so it was just like perfect opportunity, all the stars aligned. And so that's how I joined Michel at ColdIQ. And then since then, we've scaled the agency to what it is now with more than 70 active clients.
Wow, I'm sure it must have been quite a journey. So maybe for yourself, Alex, what is the difference you think between the old outbound versus the new outbound with AI?
Yeah, so we come from a world where volume was always the main focus. Like back in 2020, it's a bit more like the Salesforce era. So it's the famous book, Predictable Revenue, that kind of like taught the whole outbound playbook, building a list, reaching out to those people. And I think we moved away from volume-based outbound to a signal-based outbound. I think now a lot of people are realizing that the amount of emails you need to send to get a positive reply has just been increasing year after year. And so to give you an idea, back when we started, 2022, 2023, usually you had a ratio of 100 emails sent for 1 positive reply. And now looking back at 2025, we're closer to 430 emails sent for 1 positive reply. And I truly believe that this number will just keep increasing. And so you start to realize that the economics don't really make sense anymore. Like for sure, you can buy a lot of domains, you can create a lot of mailboxes to power that volume outbound. But now you need to be much more precise at who you're actually sending those emails. If you just build a list of 10,000 prospects and just send them the generic emails, it's going to be very difficult to make outbound work as a channel. Whereas like, if you become really good at identifying what are some specific data points or what are some specific triggers that could indicate that the prospect is in the market for your product or solution, that's where you can still make outbound work in 2026.
That makes a lot of sense. I've also heard from many clients that they're struggling with outbound, right? It seems to be a volume game. But let's talk a bit more about what you've mentioned about triggers and signals, right? So for someone who is perhaps a little bit newer to outbound, how do you define triggers or signals, and what are some things they should be looking out for?
Yeah, so a trigger is any data point that can usually indicate that the company or the person you're reaching out to is interested in your product or service. So let's give some very concrete example. For us, for example, we sell GTM services. So what are the things that we can actually assess if a company is interested in GTM services? So a few examples is like is the company currently hiring for a go-to-market engineer? If they're currently hiring for a go-to-market engineer, that already makes them a bit more likely to be interested in our services, because we can even scrape the job post and try to understand what are the needs and what is the problem that the company is trying to solve by hiring that go-to-market engineer. So like hiring trigger is a very common one. Then we can also do champion tracking. So for example, we have a client, we had one contact person at that company. That person is moving and changing company. What about we reach out to that person after maybe 2-3 months on the new job and reach out, be like, hey, John, we used to work at the previous company. What about we implement our services at your new employer? That's another one. So that's called champion tracking. Then we might have website visitor identification. So that is very specific to the US, because you can actually identify people at the contact level. So you can actually see who exactly is visiting our website. So imagine you, Audrey, is in the US, you're visiting our website. We can actually see which pages from our websites you've been browsing on. And then we can leverage that data to actually send you an email based on your browsing behavior on our website. And so that's website visitor identification is like a workflow that we usually implement for clients. So that's a third example. And then one that's actually working amazing if you post content on LinkedIn, which I'm sure a lot of the listeners are actually doing, is social engagement. And so there, what we would be doing is scraping all the people that have engaged with our post recently, that have liked, commented on the LinkedIn post from my post, or the post of the entire ColdIQ team, or people that have visited our profile. And so what we are going to do is that we're going to use a tool called Clay. And so with Clay, what we will do is like scraping all that engagement data from LinkedIn, pushing to Clay, and then we are going to just verify if the person that actually engaged with the content fits our ICP. If it's fitting our ICP, then it would be a great moment to send them a LinkedIn message or a cold email, because that's going to make them much more likely to answer you. Like if they've been engaging with your content for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, sometimes even a year, they've already some trusts in you. And so that makes them much more likely to answer to your outbound. And so that's what we mean with like trigger-based outbound, signal-based outbound, is that you don't just want to reach out to everyone. You want to make it very specific and only reach out to people that have shown some intent by like a sets of behavior. And so here I just gave 4 examples, but there are like plenty of others. We have like 60 different plays that we usually use for our clients.
I really like how specific you are, right? I think in the past, most people would think of a trigger as, oh, funding announcement and hiring for, a new lead, and then that's it. But I like how you guys are very specific in terms of where the company is at, who they are looking out for, and then reaching out to them. So previously, I think you might have mentioned something about the use of AI agents, right? Tell us more about that process. How are you guys actually embedding AI agents in your workflows?
Yeah, so this has become one of our main priority over the last few months. I don't know if you've seen the big announcement from Y Combinator, but Y Combinator has announced that for the first time in history, they're actually looking for agencies to join the new batch. And so YC really used to really focus on software, because agencies have always been a little bit overlooked. Like there's always been a bit of a not sexy business model, in the sense that it's not as scalable as a software, right? It's like usually you need to hire a lot of people. It's like if you sign more clients, then you need to hire more people. And AI completely changed the game, because now for the first time, you can actually have an agency, have the high ticket of an agency with the margin of software. Because with AI agents and the implementation of AI in the business, you can actually start to deliver the service at scale for a lot of clients without having to hire a lot of people. And so that's exactly the model that we are following. I call it service as a software. So you're trying to build internal tech that we will then leverage to be able to deliver the service better and also to more clients at once. And so now it's been, I would say, a bit less than a year that we've been really focusing on agentifying the entire agency. And so what I mean by agentifying is that we meet once a week with like a few key people inside of the business, and we look at all the different processes going on inside of the agency. And so if you look at our core service, which is still outbound, we're going to look at, okay, what are the different steps that we need to execute on to deliver the outbound service for our clients. And so typically, step 1 is going to be ICP definition. How do we decide who we're actually going to target? And so now we have an agent that, based on the onboarding form and the onboarding call, we're actually going to build an ICP matrix that will help us to actually deliver the service later on to make sure that we have the right targeting. So that's an example of an agent we've built. Second, in the outbound process, you want to build a list. So you want to build a list of companies and then a list of prospects you want to reach out to. We actually build an internal tool for list building. And so to give you an idea, before that internal tool, what we had to do list building was to go inside of Sales Navigator, select all the different filtering criteria, then exporting your list, extracting the list, and then enriching the data. And so now what we did is that we built an internal tool where people can actually use natural language. And so, for example, they can say, find me a head of sales at SaaS companies in New York with a headcount between 11 and 50 employees. They're just going to press enter, and then the entire list building process is going to be fully automated. And so we are doing that for every single step in the process. We do that for copywriting. We do that for building the email infrastructure, for list building, for actually pushing the campaign to our email sequencers. So we use Instantly to send the emails. And so we also have an agent that's actually going to go inside of Instantly and builds the entire campaign. So that's now how we look at the business, where we are really trying to develop and deploy agents for every single part of the process.
Wow, that's super cool. I'm curious to know, right, from your experience, how easy or difficult it is to actually build agents. There are so many people who talk about it, so many people who talk about agents, but they're referring to assistants. But since you guys are actually building it, can you tell me more about the process? Was it challenging? Is it actually as easy as they make it seem?
Yeah, I think there is a big difference between building tools and deploying agents, right? It's like, for example, the list builder, we're going to have a set of actions that are predefined. So that's why we would calling an agent, but we still need to build the interface for people to interact with the agent. And so that's kind of a mix of building an interface and building a product. And inside of the product, we have actually built very specific agents. And so now when you build a product, when you want to build a software, usually it's a mix of both. You want to have an interface that people can interact with, and then having like agents that you can call for specific tasks. So if people have been playing a bit around with Cloud Code, it's a bit the same. It's like you're going to give task to Cloud Code that's going to do some work for you inside of your computer. But that's amazing for your own work, but at some point, if you want to deploy it for the rest of the team, then you also need to deploy those agents to the web. And so that's typically when you're going to use companies like Versal, Railway to actually put those agents live so other people can also use them. And so that's what we've been trying to do, is that typically we have our head of GTM or head of product are going to build great products that they use themselves. And then if we see that it's actually useful, then we're going to think, okay, how do we make sure that the rest of the company can actually leverage those agents to also make their life easier? And so that's when then we need to build an application and a front end. So for people who are less experienced with Cloud Code, they can also benefit from the improvement in efficiencies that those agents are creating.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also the great part about AI is democratizing access, right, for everyone. So even folks who are maybe not technical, who are able to access and use these tools, can still build out systems that work. Alex, from your experience chatting with companies who have implemented your systems, right, what kind of changes have they seen? Tell us a bit more about the before and after, and what it is actually like for businesses using AI to build their outbound.
Yeah, so this has changed a lot over the last few months. I feel that like now a lot of companies are starting to becoming less and less keen on relying on an external agency. So when we started the business, at the beginning, a lot of companies didn't want to touch any of the system and the tools that we're actually using. They just wanted meetings. So that was kind of the pitch at the beginning. Companies needed more meetings. And so we were taking care of everything from building the email infrastructure, building the lists, doing the data enrichments, sending the emails, and the final outcome that those companies wanted and were paying for was just an amount of meetings booked for them. And I feel that now, until very recently, that was the main focus for a lot of companies. I just want more pipeline, I just want more meetings. But now companies are starting to be more and more interested in actually having agencies building systems that they can keep afterwards. And so that's why we're also starting to do more and more. So going away from a done for you model where we do everything for the client to a done with you. And so now what we start to do, since the companies are starting to be like more and more experience for everything go-to-market engineering, is that we start building workflows directly inside of the account of the clients. And so all the different triggers I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, usually we're going to go implement those workflows directly inside of the account of the company. And so based on where the company is at, we're going to do a bit of an audit and see what are the workflows that are the most useful for them. So we're going to check, okay, is the founder posting on LinkedIn? Is there other people posting on LinkedIn? If yes, then one system, one workflow that would be very useful is actually doing the social engagement automated outreach. So we're going to implement this. Are they based in the US and do they have a lot of website traffic? If yes, we're actually going to go and build that workflow inside of their account directly. And then same for like all the different systems we could implement for clients. And we see that there is like a real appetite now for having agencies coming in, building a lot of different things, usually for 3 to 6 months, and then just keeping a consulting agreement to maintain the infrastructure we've built for them. And so rather than just hiring an agency and be like, hey guys, we just trust you, send a lot of emails and book us meetings, we see that now companies, if they pay an agency, they want to keep some of the work even after the agency stop working with them.
It's very interesting. I think evolving your model, right, as the client's needs evolve, right, seem to be something that you guys are really on top of, especially because I think a lot of companies now, they know they can't run away from AI. They can't outsource it. So now people are also realizing, oh, shoots, I need to start learning and adopting it myself. And what about the people internally? Like, tell me more about your experience. Like, so I'm assuming that these companies would have sales folks, would have go-to-market folks. How do you think their roles have evolved or have to evolve?
I think that's the most difficult part. If I'm really honest, if I look back at all the different client engagements we've had, is that typically it's very difficult to find a sparring partner inside of the company of the clients. It's like typically they don't really know who should own the go-to-market engineering departments. Usually it's a mix of like sales, you have someone from marketing, maybe someone from RevOps. And so that's usually where it's the most difficult client engagement, is that when we don't have a responsible person for everything that's AI and go-to-market engineering. And right now in the market, there is so little great talent that it's a very competitive environment. Like every single company needs to start investing into go-to-market engineering talent and AI talent, but it's very difficult to attract those people because either you need to find someone very young, very eager, but then you need to have someone that actually take the time to teach them, or you need to find someone that's like super experienced, but everything is so new that it's very difficult to assess if someone is going to be good or not, right? It's like when you think about it, Clay, for example, now you start to see a lot of job posts about go-to-market engineering. And so usually you have like, hey, Clay experience required, but realistically, you might have people that have been working inside of Clay for 2 years, max 3 years. And so it's such a new skill that you have very little people that have like real experience. And usually those people, either they have their own agencies or they work for themselves. And so we feel that for us, it's going to be the next step. As an agency, we feel that there is such demand for go-to-market engineering talent that we also want to start helping companies fill those roles. Because usually when we do a client engagement, we're going to work with the company for 3 months, 6 months, installing a lot of great workflows, but there is no one to take over from us once we stop working with the company. And so we feel that if we could actually help companies finding and recruiting one of those go-to-market engineer, that would make all the work we do much more worthy because we would have someone that can take over once the work is done.
Yeah, I think also it's a matter of upskilling the teams. So even for me, when I go into a team and I train them, I need to make sure that their team members have then the skill sets to take my knowledge and workflows and implement it. Otherwise, it's just us giving them a framework, but nobody to work on it, and then you also don't see results. But maybe for you, Alex, if you had like a piece of advice for someone in the go-to-market or sales space, what would you tell somebody who's still doing things the more traditional way?
I would say just be more curious. Like right now, the world is moving so fast, so don't feel that you fell behind because the technology is just changing constantly. It's like everything comes in waves, and so 3 years ago it was like, okay, you need to learn Clay, and then it was like, oh, now you need to learn N8N. Now it's you need to learn Cloud Code, and then it's going to be you need to learn Perplexity Computer, and so every few months, and now it's almost adding every few weeks, everything is changing. So if you feel that like you've maybe like been a bit too slow to kind of adopt new technology, don't think it's too late and just start to be a bit more curious. Like go on YouTube, open YouTube and start like typing some questions. And there is no stupid question at the beginning. Like sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming with like you see all those people that are pretending to know about like all the different technologies. It's like most people are pretending. When you look at people posting content on X, on LinkedIn, it's a bit to farm the engagements, but a lot of people are not as competent as you think they are. And so don't like undervalue yourself and just start from scratch. It's like, what is Cloud Code? And then open 5 videos and start watching the videos. Take some notes and be like, okay, now I understand a little bit the basic concept. It's like how to connect my API key with my Clay account. And then you start to do this. And I think sometimes people like over complexify the learning curve and they think that it's too late for them, but I think it's never too late to start learning. Like YouTube is probably like the best platform to learn anything. I would just type some keywords, open 5, 10 videos, take one afternoon, and I think you will already be much further than you think.
Is that how also you and Michael first started? How did you guys pick up these skill sets?
I think we spend a lot of time on X. I really feel that like the latest trends, they first appear on X because you have a lot of AI folks, like it's very San Francisco, very tech bro. And so we get a lot of intel. And then for me, I almost have like a rule that if I see like a new hype, I want to wait probably like 2, 3 weeks before like starting to pay real attention because I think you have such hype cycle that like if you're always looking at the next shiny thing, it's very difficult to stay focused on the things that already make you money. And so for me, I'm like, okay, we have a business that's working. We need to make sure that this business keeps working. And that's my top priority. And then if I see like, I don't know, Perplexity Computer, and it's like, I see it one time, I see it 2 times. And then 1 week later, people are still talking, how it's changing the way they work. And it's like, okay, I'll wait a bit more. 2 weeks, I'm like, okay, people are still talking about Perplexity Computer. Now it's time for me to also start to get interested in this. And I think that's a bit of striking a balance with don't get too caught up in the hype cycle, but also don't wait too long. If you see that like something is like gaining in importance, also spend some time to at least understand what is the main concept, how people use it. So you don't need to like buy 20 Mac Mini and run like 20 AI agents on like 20 different Mac Minis, but at least understand it's like, okay, how are people using this? Like are they building businesses? Is it just to make their private life a bit more like easy? Like what are the main use cases? And I think just keeping like up to date with what's happening, that's the most important.
Yeah, even for me, I find that it's important to first master whatever you're working on. So if you are, for me in my case, right, if I was first using ChatGPT to do my copywriting and help my clients optimize their processes, I would want to make sure that I know how to leverage it and everything within it to the best of its abilities. Then when let's say Claude right now is all the rage, right? So now even for me, it's an upskilling process where I have to figure out how do I use, for example, Claude Cowork to help me in my own copy processes so that I can also help my clients. So I think like what you said, having the ability to learn but also execute, right? And then not being too distracted by every new shiny object, but being aware enough to try new things, that definitely helps. So Alex, I would love for you to show us perhaps a demo of what is actually possible, what's going on in your agency, and it would be cool for us to also take a peek behind ColdIQ.
Perfect. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna share our internal list building. So that was the tool I was mentioning at the beginning of our conversation. And so here you can see the internal tools. So we have different tabs. We can look for companies, we can look for contacts, And we can also track some specific trigger. But here, for like the sake of simplicity, I'm just gonna try to find some specific contact at a company. And so here I'm gonna use Whisperflow, so I'm gonna dictate the search query. Find me a VP of sales at a B2B startup in San Francisco with a headcount between 50 and 500 employees that have hired 2 SDR in the last 3 months, and where there is at least one go-to-market engineer or one RevOps person. And so here what's gonna do is gonna try to understand my query. And so here you see that all the criteria are already being like pre-selected. And then here, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna use a clay table that I would have like created before, pasting the link of my clay table. And then if I say, if I click on search and push to clay, all my list of contact is directly being pushed to my clay table. And from there, I can keep working on my workflow. And what you see here, this used to take easily 1 or 2 hours, because you would need to go on a B2B database, selecting all the different criteria. You would need to see like, okay, is it the right type of contact? Also, the issue that you were facing before is that you were quite limited to one specific data source. And so here in the backend, we're actually aggregating all the best B2B data source to build the best list possible. Because if you just use Apollo, for example, Apollo is like one of the most famous B2B data source in the US. They're going to have great data, but there's going to be a lot of people missing from their own database. And so we actually use also other data providers to have the most exhaustive and the most complete list possible. And so that's an example of one tool that our go-to-market engineer are using a lot. And then another one I wanted to show you is our ColdIQ brain, as we call it. And so here, it used to be like such a headache to track all the internal data, how to take the best decision, when to decide to upsell a client. We had to ask the internal team, but then maybe they didn't understand that it was the right moment. And so now we're trying to use as much data to take better decisions. And so here it's some sort of like cockpit where you see like all of the different clients, a lot of like numbers about the different retainers, what's the average retention and so on. But then inside of this, we're also gonna have a client intelligence tab that's gonna tell us when should we discuss the contract renewals? When should we discuss the client referrals? When should we discuss the client upsell? And so that's used to take a lot of time, and it was very difficult to delegate. And now AI is helping us a lot, where you still need a bit of human judgment. You still need a human in the loop to take the decision, but we take a much better decision because we have just been doing a much better job at aggregating the right data. And so that was 2 examples, the list builder and then the internal cockpits, the internal dashboards we have been building.
Wow, and you were saying that this dashboard was built with Claude Code, is it?
Correct, yeah. So the way we started was our head of GTM that started to build a lot of dashboards for himself. And that's usually how innovation starts at small companies, in my opinion, is like people are playing around with a lot of really young people, very curious, very ambitious. They start a bit at the weekend trying to build some cool side projects, and then they start to realize the potential. And then once we see that something works at the individual level, then we try to roll it out for the rest of the company. And so that's how that project actually came to life, is that Kenny started building the dashboard for himself, and then he started using that to share results with clients. And then we're like, okay, that works so well. How can we roll that out for the rest of the agency? And so now everyone in the company is actually using that specific dashboard.
Wow. So I think one thing that stood out to me was like what you said, you could find very targeted lists, and now you're also looking for targeted signals. Let's talk a bit about the personalization part. So tell us about that process, right? So what comes after? How do you guys personalize the copy, and to what extent is it personalized?
Yeah, so typically I love to explain the difference between relevance and personalization, because what you see a lot when people talk about cold email is that everyone is always talking about personalization. How can you make the email as personalized as possible? But what I always explain is that relevance is always going to be more important than personalization. If you receive an email that's like super relevant, you're not going to care that much that it's personalized. Like imagine if someone sends you an email that says like, hey, Audrey, I want to give you $10,000. Like that email could have been sent to like 1,000 people. You don't really care because it's so relevant. It's such like an easy offer. I give you money, just accept it. Whereas like if I send you the most personalized email, I'm like, hey, Audrey, I know you studied at that university and here is what you did 5 years ago. And I know the name of your grandma and the name of your cat. Like you're going to be like, okay, that's cool. That's a lot of personalization, but it's super irrelevant to what I'm currently going through. And so I always explain to people when you do cold email, first think about relevance. And that's usually what trigger and signal bring. It brings a lot of relevance. And then try to add a little bit of personalization. And so what we do at ColdIQ is that we're going to leverage the trigger to personalize. And so I can give you a concrete example. For us, what works really well is reaching out to a new head of sales or a new chief revenue officer that has been in the job for less than 3 months. So that's first trigger, like new position, less than 3 months. Then we want to see that they're already running outbound. And so for that, we're going to check, do they have more than 2 or 3 SDR? Another trigger. Then we're going to see are they already investing in go-to-market. So maybe to have a growth person, to have like a go-to-market engineers, maybe to have a RevOps person. And so we're going to layer all of those triggers. And then the email is just going to be a mix of all of this. So it's going to be, hey, John, so you joined company XYZ as a CRO. We also saw that you recently hired a go-to-market engineer and you are currently doing outbound with name of the 3 SDR. We've been implementing a lot of GTM systems for companies similar, and then we're actually going to use clients we are working with or client we've been working with as a social proof, but also relevant to him. And then we're going to be, by the way, I've mapped out 3 GTM workflows that would be super useful for your first few months at company XYZ. So there you see, it's like, it's personalized, but we kind of use the trigger to make it relevant. And I think that's how you write the best cold emails. It's not really about the super precise personalization, but it's like, how can we personalize based on the trigger we're leveraging? And so that's always the tip I give is like, always think relevance first. And then once you are relevant, personalization is going to come very easy because you can simply reuse the trigger as a form of personalization.
That's super smart. I've never thought of it in this way before. And I think what you mentioned is really accurate. The analogy you gave, right? If it's relevant, even if it's not personal, you probably would be curious to find out more. And I also like how in the example you gave, you actually provided free value. So you said, we have 3 different, strategies. Would you be curious to find out more? I think for a consumer or for a client, getting that free value, it's probably a yes to the email. So I'm assuming the email does really well for you guys.
Yeah, it works really well for us. We've always been like very focused on providing value as early as possible in the sales process. Like I think now the era of like pitching for 30 minutes of the time of someone is very difficult. Like everyone is so busy, like the mailbox of most people are completely overflowing. Imagine if you want to reach out to a head of sales in New York at a SaaS company, the poor guy is probably receiving like hundreds, if not thousands of emails every day. And so you need to find a way to not ask and try to give before you ask. And so try to really understand, okay, what is my prospect going through? What is the pain point? And how can I be useful before I'm ever in a meeting with them? And so that's always a bit like the mindset where, and even when we work with clients, we're like, okay, guys, you want to sell to a CFO in San Francisco. Those people are getting insane amount of outbounds. What could we do that first separate ourselves from the rest? And how can we be actually useful to that person? It's like, should we invite them to like a CFO dinner so they can actually meet peers and learn something? Is it showing them 5 examples of how to implement AI in a finance department? And so really trying to understand. And I think that's where having a high business acumen comes very handy, is that if you really like can put yourself in the shoes of your prospect, it becomes much easier to figure out what lead magnets, what to pitch, because you can really have like the pragmatism to try to offer something right away that's going to be useful to the person you're reaching out to.
Yeah, what stood out to me even when you're talking about this is how thoughtful that process is. It isn't just like, oh, a standard lead magnet for everyone, but you seem to give a lot of thought to the prospect, to the audience, and then figuring out what do they actually need and how you can provide that value to them. So I think for the listeners who are also, tuning into this podcast, that's a great insight from Alex, something for you to think about when building out your own campaigns or even just marketing messages. So Alex, maybe taking a bit of a detour, I would love to know about your personal journey building ColdIQ. Now, it has been a couple of years since AI first, blew up. How has this whole process been for you? What is perhaps one big lesson that you have learned on your journey?
One thing that has been very important over the last few years, and I think is going to become even more important, is that distribution is going to be where a company make it or just break. Is that it used to be that the product was the most important, that it was very difficult to build products, to build a great service. But I truly believe that now what's really gonna separate companies is who's gonna be the best at distribution. And so for us, we need to attribute a big part of our success to posting content on LinkedIn very early in the journey. And I think the brand we've been building has been like the biggest factor in our success. Like we're not just one of many lead gen agencies. Like we're really being seen as like, okay, those guys have been in the market for so long. It's usually like a feedback we get in sales calls, like, oh, I follow one of you guys, and then now I see 15 people of your team posting on LinkedIn. And so we're like really trying to be omnipresent on every platform, to be very top of mind. So even if people are not in the market right now for a solution, they might be in 3 months. And see if they've seen the value we provide in 3 months, they're going to be, okay, I need some help with GTM. What is that company? I've seen the blue brain. I've seen that guy. I've seen the other guy. What if I reach out to them? And so focusing on distribution from day one is truly the most important part of the business, in my opinion. Like it used to be that what was difficult was finding a CTO and like having the tech talents to build the product. But now it has become so commoditized. Everyone can wake up early on a Sunday, watch a few videos, go on Lovable, build some like side project and try to sell it. And I think what really is going to make or break the business is your capacity at distributing the product. So try to start as early as possible to put yourself out there, build a brand, work on those distribution channel, because it's just going to make your business journey much easier.
Yeah, definitely. I always like to say that your personal brand is your personal asset, right? So for me and a lot of the people that I interview, a lot of their businesses are also $0 in ad spend, right? You're just leveraging your organic presence, or like if you're Alex using outbound methods, they're a lot smarter than what people are traditionally used to. So personal branding, I would say, is important not just for founders, but even for mid-career switchers, right, who are figuring out, what do I do next in this AI era? Do I have a job? Do I need to pick up some new skills? I actually think now is the best time to start investing in yourself, building your brand up to future-proof yourself for the next steps. So Alex, looking ahead, right, what do you think is the future of AI and outbound? I know we can't predict what's going to happen next, but in your fantasy world, or from what you are seeing, what do you think is that future going to look like?
I think the future is going to be a API first world. And so I know it sounds very like complicated, but I truly believe that in the future, using all the different tools, connecting to like your list builder, and then connecting to Clay, and then connecting to Instantly, and connecting to HeyReach, like all the different sales tools that people are used to. I think in the future, everything is going to be fully automated, and you will just need to have access to the best API in the world. And a lot of things will be like fully done by agents, but you're going to be able to provide the best data. And I think the person that will have access to the best data is going to be the person who's going to be the best at GTM. And so right now with ColdIQ, it's also something where like investing a lot is trying to really figure out what is the best email finder, what is the best phone number finder, what is the best way to find contact data, and like actually having the judgment to select the best data provider is really is gonna separate like the best agencies from the rest. And also for any sales team, any GTM team, you really need to understand where can you get the best data, because this is what's gonna give you like the best results.
Wow. Maybe for me to add to that, I think strategy is going to play a big part. So even in my space with AI marketing and content, there is already so much content out there. You get so much content everywhere in your inbox and beyond. So I think that being strategic about how you are positioned in the playing field why people should choose you, what is the unique value that you bring. These are the things that are going to separate you from the crowd. So with that, thank you so much for joining us, Alex. Who should reach out to you and where should our listeners find you?
Yeah, so they can follow me on LinkedIn at Alex Vacca. I'm also trying to get started on Instagram at It's Alex Vacca. And then I've also started posting much more regularly some videos on YouTube. So that's the three main platforms. And then if anyone needs help with GTM systems, they can also reach out to us and then we would be happy to check if we can help them. And thanks a lot for having me, Audrey. It was a really great chat.
Awesome. I really enjoyed speaking to you too. Thank you, folks, for tuning in, and don't forget to hit the bell for more actionable AI and marketing insights. We'll see you next week. Take care.